So we're in Roscoff again, the day after the arrival of leg 3. So it was really, really nice, this leg, because it was just finally about sailing the boat than just having everything on board that breaks due to manufacturing of the boat in the factory. So feeling was good on board finally after just sailing. So we left Roscoff. It was a little stressful to start because it was a start in a very tight bay, and we had to do a inshore little race before we were able to round the last mark and head offshore. That was about 10 miles long, and there was 3 or 4 marks and a lot of little rocks, and there was about 20-25 knots. And so we had to make sure we didn't have collisions and we didn't hit the rock, and you know, the boat goes quite fast, so in every maneuver you've got to be super careful. There was a 600-meter narrow passages we had to go between rocks with 47 boats, so you had to be careful to be not too high, not too low, and when you're when you've got boats around you, you also want to have clear air, but you can't always have clear air because there's rocks, so that was a bit tricky. Once we did that, to be honest, I was very happy. I was like, okay, we got out of here, nothing's broken, we didn't hit anyone, no one hit us. So that was nice to be able to focus back on the leg. And then we went, so I wasn't very well placed. Probably a little struggle to get back into it, hard, because the leg 1 and 2 was so disappointing with all the breakages I had on board. That was due to bad manufacturing of the boat or the engine in the first place that I had in leg 1 and leg 2. So it was really good. So a little bit behind, but I was climbing back slowly back the whole fleet, so that was good. And when we rounded the Channel Islands, north of Jersey, I had a really nice passage, a little group of islands in between the rocks, which I had planned quite early on. It was called Les Écrenous, and some boats, the bit of luck involved as well there, but some boats got stuck here for 2 hours, and I managed to head straight north. So put a 10-mile lead on the back of the fleet. There was 2 groups, sort of a group of 25 boats, and then the rest of the fleet. But then we got to a place called Blanchard, and it's one of the places in France and probably in the world where there's the most current. We are tide. It's quite a high coefficient at the moment, and there was about 6-7 knots of current up there. And we got there as the tide had turned. So 3 boats managed to go through just before, and then I think there were 5 or 6 coming to the top, and only 3 went through, and the other 2 that were just beside them got stuck with us as well. So the whole fleet regrouped there, and we literally, when you look at the map, it's like a child of 3 years old that took some pen and then started drawing like lines with different colors, and this is what we did for the whole afternoon for about 5 hours, waiting for the tide to turn again. So it was really ridiculous. There was a little lift, so you were going in the coast, less current, you managed to go up, and then big bunch of rock at the top there, so you had to go around them, and then you were getting pushed with the current, and you had options to go right and crossing the whole thing, but with 6 knots of current taking you backwards, it wasn't such a good thing. So I was just doing little loops like this, climbing further and further up every time. 2 boats hit the rock there. One got stuck and had to pull out of the race. So it was not the most relaxing time. It was long for a start, but also quite scary. And then when the current started turning, I went and I was like, well, I'm gonna have to push a bit harder there, or further. So I went really near those rocks, and I want to wait there until the tide turned, because it was turning in the next hour. And then the wind died, so I got, honestly, like, I had my spinnaker up, and between me and the rocks there was less than 80 meters, and I was going nowhere. I wasn't moving. There was another boat there, Guyot Environment. There were 2 of us there, and it was quite scary. I removed the spinnaker, put the code 0, because there was so little wind that was flapping so much, and I managed to get just enough traction to extract myself. But at some stage I was like, I'm gonna have to start the engine here, and because I didn't want to end up like the other guy on the rocks. But I managed to go through unscattered and went away, and then after that there was still no wind, so we had a big TSS that we were not allowed to go in, a huge area called Casquet. And they're like a normal TSS, but then we have extra waypoint that makes the zone even larger than it actually is on the maritime rules, so it's really big. And then normally we had to go around this island called Alderney, and then between the TSS and Alderney, and then carry on to go to Mark in the Bay of Plymouth. And there was this tiny little area, the current had turned, and it was now pushing us. It was pushing us towards the TSS, and then if there was no wind, you run the risk of getting through another tide and then do a whole complete circle of Alderney again. So, short story, 25 boats decided to head north and round the TSS north, and I was part of those. We had wind, and we sailed together for 2 days like this, 10 boats, going, a bit of snake and ladder of who was leading the pack, and then we were going fast because at the end of the day, the guys that we sailed 25 mile more in a straight line than the guys that went south, and they finished 2 hours ahead of us, so we were doing about 5 knot boat speed, so we did a lot more miles, probably went a lot faster. It wasn't the right option, but what my goal was for this leg was to focus on boat speed and just sailing, and a little bit as a carry-on training ground, because I knew the overall ranking for the Solitaire was over for me. I've got a day behind the leader because of the first 2 legs, so it was just really one leg at a time, and the really good positive things was that I was keeping with some of the people that were winning the Solitaire 3 times. I was like same speed, same distance, catching some people, so it was good navigate. It was good sailing. It wasn't good ranking for the race, but it was good sailing, so that was really pleasant, and I was really happy about that, and it's good for the future. And so we arrived and yesterday night, and then now we've got 2 days to rest until the start of leg 4.